have Susan Mikkelsen from the library who'll be talking about asynchronous instruction using the iPod iTouch technology. And so let's welcome Susan.
Thank you. As Mike said, Sara Davidson and Teal Smith and I worked on this project very collaboratively, and I wouldn't even say that we necessarily had individual roles. We all worked on things kind of as a group. So Teal is out ill today, but Sarah's here, and also Donna Markley, who's the Deputy University Librarian, is here. So we're all sort of collaborators in the project. So I just wanted to start by expressing the UC Merced Librarians' commitment to the academic success of the students here at UC Merced. And we really feel like, as librarians who do instruction, that we have a role to play in helping our students succeed academically, particularly in the areas of the research projects that they have for their classes. The skill set that we refer to when we talk about what we teach in the library, we call information literacy. And it's a skill set that's evolving as information sources evolve, and it's becoming more and more critical, I think, to the success of university student education. I wanted to ask Donald to chime in here for just a minute, because he attended a meeting last Friday where there were a lot of very important UC people present, and the subject of information literacy actually came up.
They're talking about, basically about what the competing forces are for UC. I mean, we're competing, like it or not, with other ways of learning. And Greg said something really interesting, because it sounded like he was channeling a librarian when he said it. Of course, my respect for Greg immediately hit record lows when I realized he talked like a librarian. But he said, our competition is with the internet. And he said, the university used to be the gatekeeper of information. People had to come to the university to get their information. They don't have to do that anymore. And he said the role of the university now is to teach people how to find information, but also how to understand what they're looking at and to evaluate information, which is exactly what librarians say. I just was flabbergasted that someone outside the profession said that, so in such a librarian-like terms. But I think there's a lot of truth in that, you know, librarians certainly realize we're not the gatekeepers anymore. And I can tell you, I've been a librarian for almost 20 years, and the kind of questions that routinely came to libraries 20 years ago, you know, if you were sitting at a reference desk in a library, public or private, you're going to expect certain kinds of questions, like, I need an out-of-town phone number, I need to find a doctor somewhere, I need to find all these things. You don't have to go to the library anymore to get that. I mean, that's my daughter is 8, she can find that stuff if she needs to. So it's really changed the roles for libraries, and I think it's changing the roles for universities large. So I guess our big question is, what are we offering students that they couldn't get if they didn't come to UC or didn't even come to college? You know, can I be Thomas Edison, you know, the self-taught genius, because there's all this information out there?
Thank you. So the information literacy models are vast and varied, but in simple terms, when we talk about information literacy, we're talking about helping students acquire the skills to identify information needs, which is task definition, formulate information seeking strategies, that is to determine and select sources. Location and access involves actually getting the resources that they need. And interestingly, in the online environment, in a way, it's simpler because students can do a lot of it themselves and they don't need a librarian to do a lot of it for them, but in a way the environment is more complex. So that requires a certain skill set on behalf of the student. Information needs to be evaluated. Students need to learn how to extract relevant information from the sources that they find and how to synthesize the information that they get from multiple sources. And we really do find that students come to the university, particularly the freshmen, without these skills. So as we think about freshmen and their success, we know that the greater mission of the university is to keep students here, and I think that's particularly important here at UC Merced. We don't want to lose any of our students. So freshman persistence is very critical to the mission of this university. And one study showed that the top 3 variables that affected freshman persistence were social integration, institutional commitment, and attending and orientation. So I think that our role sort of falls in the second two in terms of the library, in terms of institutional commitment. That was defined in this study as the students felt like they had made the right choice for the school that they attended and that they intended to graduate from that school. And I think that successfully using the library and feeling comfortable with library resources can support that. And also attending an orientation. I think this study specifically was talking about a campus-wide orientation, and the library does participate in that, but this is a more specific orientation just for the library. And I think that we really do feel like as we contribute in that way, we are fostering freshman persistence. So the question comes up, why are we interested in asynchronous instruction? First of all, it's scalable. We know as this university grows and our library building does not grow and the number of librarians that we have does not grow, that we're not going to be able to keep up with the demand for instruction. We're seeing that to some degree already, but asynchronous instruction bridges that gap. Also, the flexibility of asynchronous instruction is very desirable. Students like to be able to do things on their terms and on their time, and asynchronous instruction allows for that. One other thing that we notice is a positive in terms of asynchronous instruction is that as we collaborate with faculty to get one of their class periods to come to the library, we understand that faculty always have a very full agenda for what they want to teach in a semester. And sometimes it's difficult for them to give up a class period. They're not always willing to do that. So by providing asynchronous instruction, faculty can give some incentive to their students to participate without giving up a class session. Also, the content for this particular tour was what we were replacing for writing one instruction. And writing one instruction is generally just sort of an overview of what the library has to offer and teaching them some very basic search skills in terms of our book catalogs. So this course was very appropriate for a tour. In fact, I know during some of the writing one sections that I taught in person, I sometimes felt sort of frustrated that I couldn't just take the whole group out of the classroom and walk them around the library to show them some of the things I was talking about. And so this is actually much better in some ways than in-person instruction. Also, the Writing One curriculum that we developed has very measurable learning outcomes. However, I will say that as an instructor, I don't think I was doing much measuring. I think the outcomes were there, but I really wasn't doing much assessment. So as we moved to this asynchronous form of instruction, there was actually an assignment that the students had to do online, which we were able to gather assessment data from. So I think we're actually getting better assessment data from asynchronous than we did from in-person instruction.
Susan, before you
Yes.
go on, can you just, for clarity's sake, define what asynchronous instruction means and what that entails?
Right. Asynchronous instruction is basically not real-time instruction. So I know I've read a million definitions for it, and I may not articulate it that well, but it's instruction that's available that the user can access without the benefit of an instructor present, and that they can do it on their own time. So things like online tutorials would be considered asynchronous instruction. Something like a tour that they check out, that would be considered asynchronous instruction. Thanks. We also looked, as we were developing this project, at sort of the mobile technologies landscape. And you probably don't need a study to tell you this. All you have to do is walk outside and look at how many students are using their mobile devices, their phones and their iPods. But the data definitely shows that this age group is heavily invested in mobile technologies and growing more so. So one of the interesting things that came out of this study, I thought, was that there are a large number of undergraduate students who expect to be using their cell phones more and more to do things that they've previously done on their laptops or computers. So we really felt like using a mobile device was moving in the right direction in terms of what our users are interested in and might go for. We're also interested in podcasting. This is another growing trend, and the data in the slides that I'm going to show you is a little bit confusing, because if you look at the trend, you can see that the trend in podcasting for adult users is definitely going up, but you still think that 19% is a fairly low number, and I would agree with that. However, if you look at a comparison of adult internet users who downloaded video on any given day compared with the percentage of college students, you see that college students are much, much higher. In fact, I think it was 62% of college students will download video on any given day. So we know that that's where our users are. We know that they're active with it. We know they're very comfortable using that technology. Here are just some more video usage statistics that compare general internet populations with college students. And in almost every area, college students are using video at a higher rate. I believe it was only in watching video with others that they actually consume less video than the general user, which is kind of interesting but not really surprising because students, I think, are very much in their own little worlds a lot of times with their viewing and other video activities. So we decided on actually using the iPod Touch based on several factors. The first was that we knew of several other institutions that had successfully used iPod technology to create tours for their libraries. Specifically, Western Kentucky University, Johns Hopkins University, and the University of Sheffield in the UK had done audio iPod tours. And then at a meeting that I went to last fall at Internet Librarians meeting in Monterey, I spoke with Jason Griffey, who was from the University of Chattanooga at Tennessee, and they had recently launched an iPod Touch video tour, and he was very enthusiastic, said that the students and faculty had really loved it, and so that kind of got our juices flowing. We thought that might be something that we could do here at UC Merced. The iPod Touch also has just a very high cool factor. I mean, kids love iPods, they love iPod Touches. We found out after we decided to do the tour that there was some sort of a sale here through the bookstore that if students bought a Mac, they got a free iPod Touch. So I hear kids talking about them all the time. They really like them. Also, the iPod Touch supported video as opposed to some of the other iPods that just supported audio. And also, they're very simple to use. I own one, and I played around with it a lot before we decided to do this. And they're very simple to use, which was important to us because we wanted a minimum of IT involvement in this, not because our IT department isn't wonderful in the library, but because they're swamped and busy. And so we wanted to be able to do as much of this as we could on our own. And we did, for the most part, do it without IT